welcome to Shotcallers. I'm your host, Dennis Postema, and today we have a very special guest, Anthony Trucks. Anthony, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on here, and we got tons to talk about.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be here, have a good chat, see what it turns into for folks.
Yeah. So you've had much success in your career. I mean, NFL, American Ninja Warrior, you're author, got your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on right now.
Yeah, I travel around the world and I talk for a living, which is kind of cool. I get to use my voice to make impact and income. So on one side, I have a brand called Dark Work where I travel out and I work with Amazon and PayPal's and the Chick-fil-A's of the world, and I'm teaching them how to do the dark work so they can win in the light. It's about optimizing your identity for peak performance. And then on the other side, I teach people how I built that business. So it's not me going like I used to speak, but actually I'm actively doing this. You have a 7-figure business where I speak and I coach and I consult. And so I run that and I teach people how I built that brick by brick.
I was fortunate enough to get to hear you speak at Secret Knock, and you lit up
Oh,
the stage. I've never heard somebody with so much energy, and I just held on to every single word. So that's why I was so excited to interview you. So, yeah, you definitely do the work. That's for sure. Tell us a little bit about what dark work means, if you don't mind.
yeah. Well, let's put it this way. The roots of it are an identity. And most people go, what does that mean? It's like the kind of things we see nowadays. And no, what it is we all have an identity. It's who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. It's your natural habits, your actions, your patterns. It's the set point, your instincts that flow. And those things, your habits, actions, patterns, those are the actions you take that create your life right now. So I'm really big on telling people you cannot attain or sustain a dream above your current identity. Because if you don't have those actions and patterns and habits, you don't get what that person has. So what I do is I would come in and go, well, how do we get those? And I have found in my life it's by going through experiences that wire you differently neurologically and psychologically. How I see things, how I function, how I pattern, towards some point you face something and you don't even think about how you used to face, you face it differently now. And so for me, I find that that is done through something called dark work. It's not shadow work, which is the things you go to find out like where your kind of skeletons are, right? It's
Right.
what you do once you know. Once you know you got to work on some things, what work do you do to fix it? And when you do this work, I say the dark, it's more behind the scenes. It's the unseen, unsexy, difficult, ridiculed, mocked, misunderstood work that when you do it, you not only develop some skill sets and achieve some cool things, but you become a different person in the process. You identify different with different habits and patterns and actions. And that's the thing that I think most people are losing sight of nowadays. We live in a very, I want to say, soft, low standard world
Yeah.
where people are like, they don't have thick skin, the standards are low, right? And they go, I want to have this thing. You don't get that because a person with higher standards and who has thicker skin, they get that. Do you want that? Let's develop that. And
Yeah.
so you're subjecting yourself to a process we call an experience that rewires you to allow you to have a standard that's high, but at the exact same time, understand how to accomplish and achieve that. And a lot of it's you, I say not being soft and having thicker skin, it's getting feedback in ways you don't want it. It's approaching things with an ownership you never used to do. But that is what allows you to get to the point of having and holding a standard that gets you to become over time that new person.
How do you, talk to me a little bit about that. How do people, when they come into training like this, because standards, I talk to my team about standards all the time and
Yeah.
like how standards are so important. We just don't have enough standards for ourselves. How do you get people to open up for that
Yeah.
when they're so closed at having those conversations and those accountability conversations?
Well, because what happens is most of the time you ask someone, hey, where do you need to work on something? And all they can think of that's most relevant is the hardest thing, it's the most vulnerable thing. Because that's the top of mind. Our biggest problems are the most top of mind, It's what we're
Yeah.
working on right now. So what I found is we have different, I guess, areas of life, different segments. And I call them roots and fruits. Like if you think of a tree, there's roots that give you good solid base that can hold you, when the storms of life come. And then those things can produce fruits. If you have good roots, they have good nutrients, they can stay in the same place, produces good fruits. These 5 areas, if you actually look at them, they allow you to segment and focus on minuscule things that are actually become big. Like the little things become the big things.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I look at these 10 and I go, okay, let's unpack these 10, see where they're at, and you score them and you figure out what you got to work on. But what it does is it allows you to be intricate in an area that you may not have seen before. So previously, if I go, where do you need to improve? Well, maybe your marriage is on the rocks. So all you think about is your marriage.
Right.
I don't want to talk about that. It's a pretty personal thing, right? I don't want to go there. So you don't. But then what if I opened up 10 other areas and I said, what if we look at your health? What if we look at your emotional control? What if we look at your friendships, right? And you can see where to work on these things. But little did you know, your wife just wants you to be healthy. She wants you to choose friends that are better for you. She wants you to not freak out when she gives you feedback. Well, you wouldn't realize it, but in working on these other things, because you opened it up, you're able to see where you're going to work. It actually helps the thing that's the most problematic. But it's going in and looking at everything not as like as a whole person right now. What do you got to work on? I don't know. Like it's
Right.
no, let me think. But if I give you all these areas to open up, you go, oh, those are the segments of my life. I do need to work better in how I manage my finances. My wife has been pissed that we're always broke. I can manage that thing. These little things can all trickle in if you just open them up and give it individual time, not try and sit here and think of what I got to work on. It's just too hard.
How did you develop that? I know we talked about that the other day. You created this scorecard or this grade where you're grading people on
Yeah.
this and helping them. How did you come up with that? Because I think that's genius. I love that because it's a non-judgmental process, and I
Yeah.
love that you're going in and going through that.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple levels. Well, one, we have this dark work assessment to see where your dark work identity sits. There's four of them you can go through. We're not going to go into that.
Mhm.
But once you get into like, okay, now I know that's where I'm at. We got to work on some things. And this became a process years ago. I happened across this wheel thing. Like, like gauge yourself on this. And if the wheel can spin, then you're doing well. Like, and it's not bumpy. Cause like imagine having like eight spokes. And then if one of the spokes is shorter than the other one. So I was cool, but I was like, I don't know if anybody ever has all of them at an eight. I
Yeah.
never do. I don't have them all to 10. Like that's crazy. So my wheel's never going to spin. But I
Right.
started thinking about, I love the concept of, for me, I look at identity like this thing where we all have this fruit off the tree, right? This fruit of the labor.
Mhm.
And I wrote this in my book where I was like unpacking the thought. I go, when I left football in the NFL, I thought I was football. I was that fruit. And everything else around me didn't matter, just that piece of fruit. When it fell off the tree, it hung for a little bit, but eventually it rotted and I felt rotten. I felt useless. I felt like I couldn't do anything. And then I realized, man, none of us have ever been the fruit. We've always been the tree. We did what we did to create the fruit in our life of that, of football, of military, of a career, of a business, of a marriage. But when you only look at one piece of fruit and you don't pay attention to the tree, all of the tree dies, including the other fruits. So what I found was like, nah, man, I want to have something in that aspect. And so this idea of roots and fruits came in because I realized for my life, I always have storms that come blowing. There's always something. Last Friday, dude, last week, I don't know what it was. It was just I feel like I had all these things poking me in different directions at the same time. It was super frustrating, right? And now imagine like my roots, I call them, are faith, family, health, friends, and emotional control. Imagine if on Friday when everything was coming at me, if I didn't have a good anchor in faith, if my family was all in chaos, if I had no friendships or bad friendships that I couldn't trust and talk to, if my health was out of whack and I was just sick and tired, or if I had no emotional control in heightened moments, dude, that thing becomes a crazy turn of events.
Right.
It really could. But because I had that, when the storms of life came blowing, I was anchored. I was good, no problems. And so a lot of people aren't paying. So that's what my thought was like. I want to be able to have a thing I can look at and like score and pay attention to, but also revisit later on. So we numerically gauge between 0 and 10 how deep the root is in your life. And then you go, okay, great. If my roots are good, I can do a lot in my life. If I have a good base, I can actually create sweet fruit.
Right.
So we call it career, education, finances, escape, and then purpose. Escape being going and taking trips and seeing the world, or just your world nearby. If I have those things in place, I can actually enjoy my career, not feel like I'm in a whirlwind all the time. I can be good with my finances to where it's not a stressor for me anymore. I can learn from life and pay attention and have the bandwidth to actually, learn about this cool world I'm in. I can go and take trips and enjoy them with great people. And I can live a life of purpose because I'm stable and I can give out to the rest of the world. It kind of became this thought that turned into a process that I ended up just making like a score behind. Cause I'm like, how do I think about the depth of this? And so it's all 0 to 10 and you just gauge it. But then you also say, okay, why did I score myself this way? And now that I know that, what is an action or pattern or a habit I can put in place to improve this by a value of 1 in the next 30 days?
Now, I love that you talk about that because your perseverance is amazing. How do you have such bounce back when it comes to adversity and coming when things, happen in life? Because
Yeah.
hearing your story at Secret Knock was just crazy. And I mean, you just crush it and your energy is so positive. How do you tell me about how you have that bounce back mentality?
What's real, it's very genuine. You know what it is? It's perspective and gratitude. Like it's the perseverance thing is like it's just a matter of do you stop or what'll make you stop. I don't think things will make me stop because even the problems I have are blessings.
Mhm.
I don't it's I have gifted problems, like it's weird to say it that way, but I've built a life to the point where like my problems are like, okay, my team isn't functioning at the level I need them to, but I have a team, like, or hey, we just invested 20,000 in this thing, it's not returning. I had $20,000 that is okay to try as an investment. Like that's a blessing as a problem. And so I have this perspective that I see everything with where I go, it's really not the end of the world. They're great problems to have. Then also statistically as a foster kid, if you look at any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids like me. Less than 1% graduate from college. Half the homeless population have spent time in foster care. So for me, I'm really in a place where I don't belong statistically. Like if you take that into account, then you take into account football, a percent of a percent make it to the NFL and play. And I got 2 years. So I have like a little bit of, like a retirement type process. And I get some cool bonuses and perks from being around. And then I had a business, my very first business I opened and I sold in 2018 after being open for 10 years. These are numbers, as you know, that are so minuscule that they don't even fit if you combine them on like a chart. And so I operate every single day fully aware of that, how bad life could be, how far off I could be. And so even the bad times, I'm like, hell yeah, at least it ain't as bad as it could be.
Yeah.
So you wonder where the energy comes from. I'm very, very fulfilled and happy. And I just want to give it out to people.
Yeah. How did you hone in on that gratitude aspect of it? Because I mean, I feel like you must have a very strong faith to have such good attitude of gratitude there and just
Yeah.
like what's your ritual like with that? Is there any ritual I should ask?
I don't know if it's a ritual per se. It's just perspective and how I operate in real time with that perspective. I've got a great God who I get to see things through the eyes, and I think there's a humbleness that's there. I think being able to play at the highest level in the world gave me this view of like, so I walk around the world and I'm around people that have their nose in the air, and they are the greatest because I am the king head of sales for this air conditioning filter company. Like, dude, you're just a guy.
Yeah.
But guess what? I'm just a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go to a speech and literally in front of 10,000 people do my thing. And then I go to the airport and I'm the guy in B2. Like
That's
that's
wow.
just what it is.
Right?
And that reality set into me. And I was like, what's the point of being arrogant and trying to like be pompous and hold this air when really I'm just a guy. I'm one of God's kids, man. It's just I'm a regular dude who does really irregular stuff. And then that's the way I like to look at it. Like, am I really a regular dude? No, I know I'm not. Like, I do different cool things.
Yeah.
But to my neighbors, I'm the neighbor. To my kids, other teammates, parents, I'm the kid's dad. But
Yeah.
that's how I think we're supposed to function. But when I go into the world, I hold my ground and I know who I am and how I show up. And so that's kind of the big piece. But also the perspective of having people in my life that I'm able to let me hear things that I need to hear, not that I want to hear. There's it's like a statement. I don't know who said it. Tim Murphy, I think is his name, and he says it's hard to see the label when you're inside of the jar. And so I have a label on my jar,
Sure.
and when it's not full, I go, "Why isn't my jar full?" And I got people that can see my label, and they go, "Hey, here's what you need to know about you." And I go, "Oh, okay." So I'm able to pull back and reel back and listen and hear, and then make the proper adjustments for my life to go forwards. Most people don't do that, and so I'm actively in that place, and I can do that. We'll call it as a practice or a ritual where I'll hear it, but also I don't know. I think that a lot of people never want to hear anything bad. And so anytime they do, it shuts them down. They get defensive. And for me, I go like, all right, so I'm not perfect. Like I say I'm not perfect. I'm apparently not. So when I hear something, I'm able to hear it without trying to bite your head off.
Right.
I can hear it as unemotionally as possible and go, is that right? God, you know what? You're right. I do that. I had a friend one time tell me this. My buddy Jay is his ex-wife. We're sitting there on summer. He goes, Anthony, you talk so much that I have no idea if I'm ever gonna like get words in. She's like, you just it's always talking about yourself. This was years ago. This was back in like, I think it might have been 2016 when I was first starting this whole building business kind of thing.
Right.
I go, ooh, it was a punch in the heart. But I go, yeah, you're right. All right, I guess that. So now I don't, not that I don't talk as much, but I'll be in settings and I'll notice from her words that I talk and I'll stop. I'll purposely ask questions. I'll listen way longer than I would. I won't butt in. I'm just there. And it's those little things that have made, I think, conversations better, relationships better. I've gotten more business from just that learning point. But imagine if I was just like, you're a hater. You don't like me. Imagine if I did that as a
Yeah.
response to her. I never get the backside of the positive of what life had to give me.
Yeah, I think that's a huge perspective right there because it took me a long time. I was around a lot of yes people at the beginning of business. And when I heard constructive criticism, I would take offense to it. And as
Mhm.
I started growing in business and as I started looking for the positives and what I could change and how much that helped, it was amazing to see what a difference that made in my business. Just being able to take that in, include I tell my graphics team this, everything, because people get offensive when their graphics are messed up and whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you can't
Yeah.
take it personal. Like it doesn't
No.
you like something different than I like, and then that person likes something and if somebody has a vision in their mind and you're not landing on that vision, you can't take it personal because it's
No.
still their business.
Yeah. It's the thing is, and it's okay because I used to play professional sports, right? And what I noticed was when I was out there, my coach's job was to go like, all right, you're one of the best in the world because you're obviously in the NFL, but you sucked at this play right here. Imagine if I got all pissy every time the coach coached me.
Yeah,
It'd be weird. He stopped coaching me. I wouldn't play. So the thing is, you can still be great and get not so great feedback.
yeah,
But individuals they're not taught to do this. It's a weird thing where in my life I am now presently aware when I interact with somebody who has not played sports
yeah,
or been in the military. And I can gauge it because you can't handle not amazing feedback. And when you've been around sports long enough, you'll be able to get feedback that is critical and go, thank you. Like that's the thing. When I go to these companies I consult for, I'm talking Fortune 100, Fortune 50 companies, the difference in the rooms, I'll tell you the difference. I'm in rooms with people who will say things that are so abrasive and direct that if I was in a different room, there'd be fistfights breaking out in the middle of the room. But these people are mature and they're professional and they understand the purpose as to why they're being told something and they understand what they're being told and they almost don't even care how it's being told. Right. So it's like,
as long as they're
thanks
hearing
for
it.
coming,
Yeah,
because they know they needed to get better. Other rooms that we're so protective of our ego that we're not even worried about the outcome. Like like people will tell you one thing and it's like you got to tiptoe around. I can see when people are tiptoeing around the statement. And it's like, dude, that's wasting time.
yeah,
And then what happens is you leave this room and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't, but you go do the same thing again. And then we're back in the same meeting, as opposed to someone going, hey, you need to stop talking to clients like this. They don't appreciate it. They give me too much feedback. Or hey, this edit isn't the way I need it to be. I need to go back over the outlines and break it down, but this isn't going to be adequate. It's not good for the brand. Doesn't mean you're bad at what you do, just means we have room to get better. Let's get better. Those who can hear that, you want them on the team. Those who don't, you're like, how do I get rid of Susan without making her get pissed and and then it's like then your focus is everybody's focus is off. All
yeah.
because we couldn't have hard conversations.
How do you suggest, I got a couple things. How do you suggest somebody goes in if somebody's having a hard time with, beating around the bush or. Yeah, how do you suggest that they develop that skill set to have those direct conversations and really just go after it?
Yeah, it depends on the person receiving it. You have to set up a container so people can actually know what's about to take place. And it
Okay.
becomes a practice, in my opinion. So if I go and have a hard conversation, I would name that conversation something for the company like, hey, we're about to have a blank conversation. What's that? It's a tough one. I don't want to have it. I know you don't want to have it, but we need to have it. All right, let's do it. And what you do is you come into the space so they're not going to be blindsided. The biggest reason people freak out when they have these hard conversations, you're blindsiding them. And
Okay.
if you throw a rock at someone and they feel they're gonna tense up and they're gonna get a rocket and try to throw it back at you, right? It's almost a natural instinct. Like if you tug at a dog's leash, it naturally pulls back. It's a
Right.
just an instinctual reaction. So let me know it's coming, right? Hey, I'm about to throw a rock at you. You are? Okay. I can catch it. So the idea is like I'm prepared for it a little bit more. And then what you do is you have a process through which you actually guide the conversation. This is how I've taught it before. is you go into the conversation, go, look, I'm going to tell you some things you're not going to want to hear, but I need you to hear them. Here's the thing. I want us to get to this point here. The goal of this conversation is to be in this space, this stage. And it's an optimistic, positive place we're trying to get. But tell them, as we all know, the places that are the most beneficial, they're the hardest to get to. That's why the best views at the top of a waterfall, you have to climb to get there, you know? So
Right.
as we go through this, just know that that's the place I'm trying to get to. And then what you do is you let them know, hey, you can do the crab sandwich in this position, which is actually pretty straightforward. You go, hey, here's what you're doing great at. I'm gonna be honest, you're doing phenomenal with this. Butter them up. And then you go to the next thing. Here's what I'm noticing we need to improve upon, or maybe, and here's the thing, and I do this too. I go, here's also where I need to improve. So I'll tell them before I tell them their improvement, I go, here's your things you're doing great. Here's where I think we need to work, but here's what I know I need to do better. And now I put myself out there. I submit myself to
Yeah.
being, and I take it so that they know, okay, cool. If he put himself under the gun, like, okay. So you do it a little, like, I need to work on this and this and this. I'm not being the greatest this for you. It's probably not helping you. But here's what we're noticing. And you give them the feedback. This isn't going so well. And go, I'd love to figure out, what do you think are some ways we can work through this? Like, what can I do to help you? Now, this is a matter of, like, look of it metaphorically like a table. If I'm on one side of the table and you're on that side of the table, and there's a problem and I push it at you, you push it back. And I
Right.
push it back, and it's back and forth. But if I get up and walk around the table, we both take a hand and pull this thing in, we solve the problem together.
Yeah.
So I lay the thing down. Here's what I got to work on. Here's what you got to work on. How can I help you solve this? And we sit down, we figure it out together. And I go, great. I'm still excited you're able to do this. Let's get back to that kind of thing. And then you end the conversation. Now, you have to realize also, in the middle of that, you're going to say some things that are going to trigger the person. They're going to spike their emotions up. In those moments, you pause and breathe. You do not meet them where they're at. It'll just escalate it. They get all, but you don't. I get it. Look, I really don't want to argue. I don't want to fight. I do not want to raise our voices. There's no need to do that. We're adults. We're professional, people. We can talk calmly about this. Like, you come back, they're gonna poke you, but you don't. You're right. I'm not perfect at that, and I do want to spend some time addressing that for me. But right now, I want to focus on what we can do with you, because that's the best of our time, best use of our time. And then if you want, I'm happy to talk about my area. But if we only focus on me, we're never going to work on your stuff. And you bring it, but you keep bringing it back to center, and then we focus on it and we fix it, and then we move forward from that conversation. And then here's the thing: it's crazy, when they do the thing you want them to do, celebrate them like a 5-year old. Well done, right? People love public praise.
Right.
You who you are. You do a good. Hey, Nick, everybody, stop. Nick, great job on that count, man. We got it. We locked it in. Without you, it wouldn't have happened, man. Well done. You tell me everybody's want to get that praise now, like that Nick got that across the office. Hell yeah, right? So these little things, they add up and they move in the right direction, but most people avoid them. But it's not a one-way street. It's got to be done with duality in mind.
I think that's some of the awesomest advice I've ever actually heard. That's a very good approach to doing that, and that's I mean, I find that useful for me as well as I'm sure a lot of our viewers find that useful. That's a how do you on that note, how important is it to be coachable and trainable? I think a lot of people are missing that aspect, and I know you mentioned that with people in sports and the military. How important is that in today's world?
No, it's critical, man. It's the only way we get better. If we don't have that, you're hoping that you figure things out. And there's no way to do that, because you can't see everything you do. You definitely can't. There's things we do that we think are cool, and they're just not. And it's not intentional. We do it wrong, but it's just not helping. And unless somebody can communicate and have feedback and go back and forth, you're wandering around in the dark. And then here's the worst part: is you're spinning your wheels, you're burning up a bunch of energy. You're going, I've done so much work, but I'm still not getting stuff done.
All right.
What's going on? And that's what we usually face. The reason is because we're doing work, but not our work. If we trickle back to the identity conversation, most people go, I just got to have some better habits. So what do? We go look at our idols, and we go look at people that are heroes of ours, and people we admire. We go, well, they do that. Let me do that. So you start doing it. You get tired, you get burnt out, your life's no better. You want to know why? Because Nick had certain holes in his bucket that Nick chose habits to fill.
Mm,
You have holes in your bucket that you're using Nick's holes to fill, different locations. So you're doing all this work that Nick's doing, but still dripping water out. So
that's
the idea is you got to figure out what your hole location is and do that work to plug those holes. Then you'll do less work and have more success.
I love that. That's a very good point. I mean, I tell people that for working out, you've got to figure out what works for exactly for you. And that's the same
Yeah.
thing. You got to figure out because everybody's diet's different, everybody's body's different, and until you figure that out. Now, on that note, let's talk about that new gym, huh?
Yeah. Yeah,
That looked amazing, man. That's
baby.
yeah. So
New
tell
thing.
me about what a workout looks like for you.
Well, it depends on what it is. It
Yeah.
varies. So I'm in this in between where I want to look good naked, but I also at the same time want to be functional. And it's not always the same. Like aesthetic training is different than athletic training
Yeah.
because the reps, the sets, the movement, right? So I'm trying to merge it now with doing like bodybuilding and track workouts. My wife does track. I want to do masters track, whether and run, but I also don't want to be so skinny that people will test me in public. You know what I mean? Like as a guy, you know what I mean? I don't need anybody looking
Yeah.
at me sideways, bro. Like questioning, can they take me? Hell no, you can't. But I don't, anyway. So
I
yeah,
love
the gym. I mean, but it's not just for me. You know, it's designed for my family to be competitive. My oldest son is a collegiate athlete. My twins, are, they do track and football as well. So the idea is I wanted a haven that allows us to train because that's who we are. It's what we do. We live, we
yeah.
train. My wife's in the gym. We're covering. It's just our identity as a family. So it's built for that. But it's also something where I want to be there and like spend my days in there. I honestly am almost done with everything. I had to finish that, to finish the garage, to finish some side stuff. And then I'm gonna live in there, dude. Like, if I'm not in here, I'm gonna be in there just doing core for no reason. For like, let me get a set of core in. Why
Yeah.
not? Like, get a couple bench press, get some bicep. Like, what? Just live in there all day long. And I feel like there's something to the emotional connection to a physical exertion and psychological confidence.
Yeah.
When I
That,
can exert myself and push myself, and I'm past that limit, dude, you garner so much internal sense of pride. That's why the gym bros are so confident.
yeah.
Like they're not the smartest all the time, right?
Right.
But these dudes got confidence and swag. Why? Because they know how painful it was to push through that set of biceps. They skip the legs, but the biceps all day long. And so they go and they walk into the day with the chest all up, feeling good about themselves. I'll give it to you, bro. You had to work to get that because you cannot cheat a body
Yeah.
even if you're taking, we'll call it performance enhancing drugs, you still got to lift. Like
Yeah.
just because you're on the sauce doesn't mean all of a sudden muscles shoot out of your butt. You
Yeah.
still got to lift. So that's why the confidence gets in there. And so I want to go back and get some of that. I'm a natural dude. I always will be.
Yeah.
But the idea is like I like doing the hard stuff and push myself because you feel differently. Like when I get on a stage for a speech, I will not give a speech without working out that day
Yep.
no matter what it is. I've got it because I need to get in that stage and ooze the fact that I believe in this and I live this.
And there's something to say about somebody, and I mean, I'm sure you feel this because I know I do. Like, there's something to say when you hear somebody speak or when you talk to somebody who's in shape. Okay, this person doesn't break promises to themselves. So
Yeah.
I know that I can automatically assume that their word is good because they don't break promises to themselves. So that gives them a leg up, right?
It's not just words. You're right.
Yeah.
I look at people, I'm not gonna lie, there's people I know that I respect them from a distance,
Hmm.
but I look at them and go, I don't think you know that no one believes you. Like I look at you and I'm watching you and just looking at how you treat your own body, like no one believes the motivation coming out of you, man. It sucks. But
Yeah.
it's reality. Now it's not my role to say anything, but I'm hoping some in their life can be the seed that helps them change some things. But this world that we operate in, where I'm affecting someone's life, there is a subconscious part of it that if they look at me and go, he doesn't eat what he's cooking, they're not going to eat it either.
Yeah. You have to lead by example, and I think I
Yeah.
think
I mean, and I'm not saying you gotta be 6 pack ads, froning out here, killing it in CrossFit. You don't gotta do all that. But I gotta look at you and go, homeboy gets down or homegirl gets down.
Yep. Yep, they hold themselves to a higher level when it comes to standards, obviously. And tell me a little bit about because I know when I did my home gym, isn't there something different about just being able to get out and go and it's right there? And they're just like,
Yeah.
it's so
I,
crazy.
well,
Like I did,
I've owned gyms before. Like I owned six. And I actually didn't like working out at my gym because when I did, everybody wanted to talk to me because I was the owner.
yeah,
And when the pandemic hit, like I had a gym membership at a different gym, and I hated it because equipment's in place that don't make sense. It's not
right,
maintained or taken care of. There was no rules because my gym was also like a small put your weights away or you don't get to come back kind of gym.
yeah,
And so it was like it was maintained differently. And these people just, they don't care at the other gym. So when I could had pandemic and I could like create my own gym, oh, I jumped at the chance. And we had for the most part this little small home gym. Then I expanded a little bit and put some money into that when we bought a new house, put it in the garage. And then recently we're like, we want our garage to park our cars in, redo some stuff. So I was like, all right, time to build the gym. And so we built the gym, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being on here. Tell everybody how they can get a hold of you and where to get contact information.
Yeah. If you just go to you can go to darkwork.com or at Anthony Trucks on Instagram or anthonytrucks.com. Wherever you choose to go find me, I'll be all those places.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you being on the show. And
Hey,
until
man.
next time.